In last week's episode of The Divide, Professor Beatrice Galelli walked us through how China is tailoring its messaging for its international audience based on their culture and value system.
Generally speaking, we found out that for the English language, they adopt a more communicative approach, in a sense that it means that basically they, in some parts, they also soften the language. Use a softer language to convey the message, while in the Italian and the Arabic one, they tend to be more ideologically close to the Chinese version of the text.
And this week we pick up where we left off, the family metaphor in the messaging regarding Xinjiang, the largest autonomous region populated by majority Muslim communities. You are listening to The Divide. My name is Iris Xu.
And in the case of Xinjiang, for instance, going back to the family metaphor I was describing for cross-strait relations, in the white papers, usually it's not always like this. There are some exemptions, but usually the family metaphor is not maintained. There is a widespread use of the present perfect to convey this idea of belonging for centuries, but the family metaphor is not always maintained. So the family metaphor is mostly used for the Chinese-speaking readers, while the English one prefer a more neutral language in that aspect. The focus is kind of different. In the Chinese version, you have Xinjiang is part of the Chinese family. So the state is doing is good because it's from the point of view of a father who is taking care of his children. While in the English version, the focus is on history. So Xinjiang has always been part of the Chinese nation, or it has always been part of China, so no other country should interfere.
Either way, it sounds terrifying to be using family metaphors.
Yeah, the family metaphor is interesting that is not a feature of Chinese political discourse. Its use is very widespread. Like Lakoff, a US-based scholar, he analyzed also the different usage of the paternalistic states towards its citizens. It's used in the US political discourse as well. And in the case of China, it has been used for very long time, actually, and it is still at the center of the rhetorical strategies in various fields, especially when it comes to China's domestic politics.
I see. Your other research, From a Story of Disaster to a Story of Victory, Chinese media reports in the COVID-19 crisis.
That was a research I conducted in collaboration with a colleague of mine, Rongya Jiao-an from Palatsky University. She's a sociologist, and in that research, we wanted to compare how the COVID-19 and the state response to COVID-19 were covered by different types of media in China. So we basically distinguished between official media like CCTV, People's Daily, Xinhua, and commercial media. Commercial media are those medias that basically they tend to get closer to the public's interest. Because they have to survive in the market, basically. They have to sell their products in the market. And if so to do that, they have to attract the people's attention. In this category of commercial media, we have media that were or still are particularly famous for their investigative journalism. Nanfang Zhoumo, Southern Weekly, used to be one of those. I say used to be because it's not so much longer like that. But in this kind of commercial media, we also found that Caixin is one of those commercial media. And Caixin covered COVID-19 very well, in a sense. And so we wanted to analyze what are the differences, because we realized that at the very beginning, there was a space, kind of a temporal window, during which commercial media were allowed to report what was going on. And then the window closed, and the official media provided their own version of the story, in a sense. So we focused on the representation, for instance, of particular actors. Let's say we focused, for instance, on the healthcare workers. And so we found that Caixin provided a very detailed description of their effort, but also of their suffering, for instance, which is something that is not reported in the official media. And the official media, health workers are heroes. They are fighting for the country, fighting full of patriotism. So there is no space for their feeling, for their suffering during that period. And of course, another aspect which is central is the role of the institutions, of the political institutions. COVID-19, the Caixin report basically describe also the role played by local government in letting the virus spread, something which is not, even though we know that the central government, they actually took action in investigate what was going on at the local level. The official media didn't report so much about these faults, let's say.
What Beatrice and her research partners spotted was a brief moment of free press doing its job. When the coronavirus first broke out in the city of Wuhan, China's press actually enjoyed a very brief moment of flourishing before authorities cracked down. On February 10th, the state-owned magazine China Newsweek reported on how Chinese leaders missed a critical window to control the outbreak, something the government now strongly denies. And later that month, the Caixin News magazine published an interview with a health expert who asserted that local hospitals and health authorities had lied about the severity of human-to-human transmission. And in March, China's Newsweek published a story alleging official negligence surrounding the collapse of a hospital that was used to hold people during virus quarantines. People magazine interviewed a doctor who was reprimanded by hospital management for sharing patients' positive coronavirus test results with his colleagues. A medical trade news website, DXY, reported that many frontline medical workers had not received the financial subsidies promised by authorities. Even the pro-government tabloid Global Times published an article alleging that the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention, a government body, had rejected local hospitals' early alerts about the virus. But Chinese government quickly employed the censorship tools, such as forcing outlets to take down articles as officials tried to assert the state's narrative of China's success combating the virus. And on March 23rd, students and professors at Nanjing Normal University's School of Journalism and Communication published an investigative report titled The Disappeared 41 Epidemic Reports, estimating that at least 41 news reports published by Chinese outlets had disappeared from the internet since January 23rd. According to that report, most of the deleted articles contain negative facts about authorities' failures, the difficult situation in the Hubei province. But of course, within 24 hours, the report was taken down again. And a month later, on April 19, 2020, 3 college students were arrested for collecting and republishing news articles and social media posts that either have been censored or might be censored in the future. 2 of the students were charged with the crime of picking quarrels and provoking trouble. They were sentenced to 1 year and 3 months in prison. And there were also 3 journalists. who went to Wuhan in the early stage of the outbreak to try to document what is happening in the city, and all 3 of them were arrested. One of them remains in jail today, and that is Zhang Zan. She was first sentenced to 4 years in prison on the charge of picking quarrels and provoking trouble. In prison, she went on a hunger strike, but Chinese authorities didn't care and force-fed her, which is a breach of international law. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, it is perceived as torture or inhumane treatment, and therefore it is prohibited by international law. With that in mind, let's go back to Beatice's research.
I also uses the text coming from different types of media in my teaching to show the students how the language, different kinds of media differ. So, for instance, in text on Caixin, it's difficult to find those political jargon typically used by CCP. While, of course, People's Daily, Xinhua, they are full of very formalized language, as the scholars before me have already described. And one, talking about the way Caixin continued reporting COVID-19 at the beginning, I also found that I usually use an article which was published at the beginning of February in 2020. And I used 2 articles, one published on the People's Daily and the other one published by Caixin on the same day, to let the students understand the differences. So while the article from the People's Daily celebrates the unity of the Chinese people, using renmin, for instance, as a signifier to describe this idea of a unity, and that by putting efforts together, they can fight against the virus and so on. Instead, Caixin focuses much more on the need of transparency in reporting the news about the virus, and focuses on the lesson that institutions should learn from past experience, with a clear reminder of 2003, of the SARS of that time. And at one point, something that I found from a translation point of view, something that I found extremely fascinating, was the use of a quotation taken from official discourse to criticize the state response to COVID. At one point, the text in Caixin uses the word 人民安全和生命健康是第一位的. Now, this sentence sounds very familiar to all those people following China's official discourse on COVID, because it was reported everywhere. It was a sentence pronounced by Xi Jinping, reported by official media. But in the use of this sentence on Caixin, it was used to criticize, because it was used like to say, if people, the health and the life of the people really is at the first, it really is considered to be the most important task, then the state shouldn't have suppressed the information. So, and there is no use of quotation marks, nothing that in the text tells that this is a quotation, but everyone who is interested in Chinese official discourse can understand it was basically a quotation. And it was interesting also from a translation point of view, because there's the need to make readers aware. If we want to translate that text properly, I think that we should allow the reader to understand that it was a quotation from official discourse.
Wow, that was very bold from Caixin.
Yeah.
Did they face any retribution from the state?
No, that I'm aware of.
Caixin, the news outlet, didn't get punished. But those who archived Caixin's articles, who volunteered for the Terminus 2049 project, were sentenced to 1 year and 3 months in prison on the charge of picking quarrels and provoking trouble. My final question is, how would you describe the current Italy-China relations?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Well, you know, and our listeners, I think they know already that Italy was the only G7 country joining the Belt and Road Initiative, and so far the only country leaving it at one point, very recently actually. Well, the relationship between the two countries now, although Italy left the China's-led initiative, they are still quite good because in the current government that decided to leave the Belt and Road did so in a way, in a soft way, let's say. While leaving the Belt and Road Initiative, also relaunched the partnership, the strategic partnership between the two countries that was established by the Berlusconi government at the beginning of this millennium. And so, although the EU-China relations so far are still tense in a sense, when it comes to the relations between specific countries, they varies. And in the case of Italy, there is the attempt by the Italian government to align to EU's stance towards China, but also without compromising the economic relations between the two. There were a few official visits to China last year. There were also contracts signed by companies for collaboration. Italy hosts one of the biggest Chinese communities. And I use the plural form because I think that, in a sense, it's weird to talk about one community nowadays. There are Chinese of second, third, fourth generation. They are Italian, basically, but they have roots in China. And it depends on how far these roots are nowadays to say whether they are Chinese in a sense or Italian Chinese or whatever we want to use, or Italian only. In a way, there is a kind of Italy is trying to manage well this kind of relation, also from, let's say, a middle power position.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Divide. My name is Iris Xu. This episode is produced by Radio Taiwan International.